In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. You may be seated. Well, last weekend I had the privilege of journeying to East Tennessee, to the Smoky Mountains with my dad and my brother, one of my brothers. We've done this once before, and our intention, even though it's kind of getting off the ground in fits and starts, is to try and make this an annual thing, right? The four of us, a day of hiking and hanging out, journeying up Mount LeConte and back in Gatlinburg. If you've never been to Gatlinburg, I'm assuming that most people in this room maybe have, but it's definitely an experience not to be missed. It's sort of like it's like a redneck resort town, if you've never been there before. The people watching is beyond anything that you could ever experience at your local Walmart. It's pretty incredible. I love this little town, though, probably more for the nostalgia, than anything else. I remember going as a kid. We go maybe about once a year. Getting a donut from the donut fryer, or buying some little trinket or candy from one of the stores there on the strip. But the intention for my brothers and my dad and I is just to go and hang out, and specifically to hike up Mount LeConte. My dad's been doing this, I don't know, since the 70s or something. And it takes about 4 hours to get up, 4 or 5 hours, depending on which trail you go up. You can, go out, hang out in the little lodge there at the top of the mountain. They've got cabins and stuff. So go up, buy a t-shirt, come on back down. That was the intention anyway. Unfortunately, this is not the way this particular trip went. I ended up starting to feel pretty terrible not long after we got there. When it was time to start up the mountain on Saturday morning, I knew that I was not going to be starting up the mountain on Saturday morning. So I had to stay behind. I sat in the car for 7 hours. Luckily, the weather was nice, beautiful atmosphere, but I sat there just praying for sweet death to take me. Most of that 7 hours. If you haven't been to Gatlinburg in a while, it's something different than maybe what you experienced a couple of years ago. The landscape is different from maybe what you remember. There's still very constant, very visual evidence of this forest fire that raged through a few years ago. Even though spring has come, the green has returned to many of the trees. A great number of them still carry the scars of the battle that was raged. It's interesting, some mountainsides, a lot of the trees survived, and a lot of the green has returned, the leaves are starting to appear. But it's interesting, if you look a little bit closer, the back half of some of these trees are still completely black. Just that overwhelming evidence of the heat that landscape endured. Many of the mountainsides are still completely devoid of trees now. It's like a post-apocalyptic wasteland, a result of a great bomb blast or something. It's pretty bizarre. It's jarring to see, especially if you've been there and you are expecting the beauty of the mountains, the ever-present beauty of the mountains to greet you. Suddenly you get this very completely odd landscape even still. Of course, for the people there, once you've endured something like that, there's no forgetting that experience, right? You don't just put it out of your mind. So life-altering, so traumatic, that the memory is like an ever-present, just visceral companion. For the readers of our passage in Isaiah, they're sort of maybe on the other side of something pretty similar. Isaiah 43, you get this very sort of strange message conveyed. The writer, for a brief moment, makes reference to one of the peak moments in Israelite history, one of the good times. The moment that their freedom was first secured. God leads them out of Egypt, out after the plagues decimated Pharaoh and the Egyptian people. Pharaoh releases them out of desperation, right? He just wants them out. Just go. But then just as quickly, his wrath is stirred, and he wants to take revenge. He sends his army after them. If you remember. Sends his army out to wipe them out or to drag them back, whatever comes easiest. The moment the freedom for the Israelite people was secured was not when they left. It was not when Pharaoh first released them. It was when God closed the waters over the top of the Egyptian army as they were in hot pursuit. When the path that was clear for the Israelites becomes a trap of death for the Egyptians. That's the moment. That's the moment that their freedom was secured. The moment the Egyptian army was extinguished like the wick of a candle. So this was victory, right? This was victory for Israel. Surely this was one of the moments they would always want to remember. This passage actually falls in a particular section of the book that is generally thought to be written much later than the first 39 chapters, 40 through 55, chapters 40 through 55. Many scholars believe that this was written later on during the period of the Babylonian exile. So what does that mean? That means that they're on the other side of their temple being completely destroyed. They're on the other side of their city being burned to the ground. They're on the other side of being drug off into slavery. It's a pretty traumatic moment that's still pretty fresh in their mind. So it's interesting that this passage, Isaiah 43, Isaiah is saying, look back on the good things even that God did for you. Surely, he's going to say, hang on to those moments. Cling to them. Carry those moments with you. But Isaiah says something strange. What does he say? Look at the passage if you've still got it in front of you. He recounts this mighty deed that God has done for their ancestors. Closing in the waters over the Egyptian army, extinguishing the forces of the Pharaoh in a second. And then what does he say? You know what? Forget it all. Do not remember the former things, nor consider the things of old. Set them aside. Isaiah seems to be saying to people, you know what? You're living too heavily in the past. You're clinging too tightly to the things that God used to do. Or the ways that He used to act. Or the ways that He delivered you in the far distant past. Let them go. It's not because the memory of them is destructive. It's not because having fond memories and clinging to the good times, is a bad thing. Surely remembering the good old days of God's Egyptian rescue wouldn't be a bad thing, right? Drum up a little nostalgia. No, Isaiah says, what God intends for your future may look very different than God's activity in the past. In fact, the way that God acted on your behalf in the past are actually keeping you from seeking Him in the present and looking forward to what He has for you in the future. If that's what's happening, if you are clinging too heavily, if you are keeping your gaze fixed in the rearview mirror, you got to forget that stuff. You got to set it aside. Don't even consider the days of old, he says. Don't let the reminiscence of what God did for you in the past keep you from looking for God right now. Behold, I will do a new thing, he says. I will even make a road in the wilderness, rivers in the deserts, things that seem impossible. That's what I've got planned for you in the future. It shall spring forth. Shall you not know it? Are you going to be looking for it? Or are your expectations going to be so fixed on what God did for you in the past that you can't recognize what He's doing right now? Isaiah is telling the people that their future will not look like their past. You know what? You're in captivity now. You're serving a foreign power in a foreign land right now. The temptation is for you to look back and say, oh, this is how God did it for Moses and the Israelites. This is what we should expect. If you're trying to force your circumstances into some preconceived expectation, then you're bound to be disappointed, Isaiah is saying. He's going to do something new. He's going to do something different. You got to look for it. You have to be looking forward. We know what God did before. How many of us do the same thing? We have some, spiritual glory days in the past that we fixed our minds onto. We know that He provided for us in this particular way, in this particular method. If that's what we're so fixed upon, then our expectations are going to be left unmet. We're maybe even left disappointed because He's not doing it again. Release your grip. Isaiah says, release your grip on the past. God is doing something new, and it's going to look different, and it's going to be exciting, but it's not going to be the same thing. God would end up bringing the Israelites out of captivity again a second time, but it did not look like it did when they left Egypt. They were released to go back home to start rebuilding. But there was hardship. There were challenges involved. They were free. They got to move back home, but it did not look like it did in the past. But in so many ways, it was better. God did something new. God did something different for them. What does Paul say? Forgetting those things which are behind, and reaching forward to those things which are ahead, I press toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus. Let us fix our gaze on the God who has rescued us and will rescue us. Let us trust Him for today as we walk with Him. Amen.